This is the panel that's going to be on building better creative and technical teams for today's toys companies. And we've got all sorts of great things to show you today, so I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming. I'm Jinny Gudmundsen. I am the Kid Tech columnist for USA Today. I also work with a group called commonsensemedia.org, and I have a website called Tech with Kids. And on the panel, next to me is Chung, and Hannah is the co-founder and chief creative officer at Sproutel, and Sproutel makes interactive, empathetic robots for kids with chronic illnesses to learn and cope through play. Sproutel's first product is Jerry the Bear, a cuddly teaching tool for kids with type 1 diabetes. And their goal is to expand their technology and curriculum to other diseases such as autism and asthma. So, Hannah, why don't you give us just a short, explanation of your product a little bit so we can get a sense of who you are.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Hannah. I actually worked on Jerry the Bear since I was a freshman in college, and it was an extracurricular that I fell in love with, and now it's my startup. So I'm officially working on it full time for the past 2 years, and we just expanded our team to 5 people, which is pretty exciting. The reason why I started Jerry the Bear was it was from a personal passion of me and my co-founder. My father's family had type 2 diabetes for many generations, so growing up, it was something that I was really interested in. Even though Jerry is about type 1 diabetes, learning about the disease and coping with the process is really challenging. And even for kids, they can't use their own medical equipment until they're teenagers. For when they're diagnosed when they're 3 years old, they don't know why they're going through this process. So we definitely saw a gap where, if all these kids need this type of learning tools, and also they already do just things like, using their plush animals and actually stapling a drawing of an insulin pump to kind of mimic their process, how can you bring that interactive component to that space to really make kids happy? So since then, we built about 29 different iterations of prototypes, tested about 350 kids, and we just shipped out our 250 bears to families across 28 different states. So we're pretty stoked about that. And I think for questions, we have a lot of challenges in setting up small manufacturing, building teams, changing a lot of our features based on feedback. But we love what we are doing and excited to kind of really branch out our technology to other diseases, as mentioned, autism and asthma too.
So we're going to get into some of those questions in a bit. Next on the panel is Gloge. Did I say that right? Close?
Yeah, that's good.
Carly's the co-founder and CEO of Ubooly, and her company makes a voice interactive toy that guides kids to become amazing people through creative and educational experiences. She believes that most toy companies are not prepared for the recent shift from standalone experiences to mobile technology. Her diverse team at Ubooly reflects this philosophy. So tell us a little bit about Ubooly, if you would.
Sure. So we started off with the concept of taking the power of a mobile app and putting it in a toy. We realized very quickly that that was the tip of the iceberg. When we first shipped Ubooly, while it was amazing that it could talk and listen to kids, parents said, I want this thing to teach my kids Spanish. I want it to get them to brush their teeth and really be a friend. So we realized that we had a big challenge ahead of us. We actually started hiring teachers to help us write content, and that's where I think we found our stride there. We live in a world now in the US where 16% of teachers quit their jobs every year. And they do that because they don't feel entitled and we're teaching for tests. Through Ubooly, we're changing that, and every time we put up a job post for a teacher position, we get over 1,000 applications. So we're really able to take the cream of the crop and really change the way how kids are learning with a device that kind of has a bad reputation right now. A lot of parents are scared of more screen time. We're trying to do it, use those screens to do good for kids, make their lives better.
Next on the panel is Tyler Freeman, and Tyler is an engineer, musician, and co-founder of DrumPants, a wearable musical instrument. And DrumPants' goal is to incorporate musical toys, computer science, and education into a fun, playful experience. And I'm hoping he's going to show us. So Tyler,
Hi, thanks Jinny. Yes, I am wearing the DrumPants right now. Yeah, so they're basically the DrumPants are just wearable drum triggers. They're just wearable sensors that you can put in your pants or your jacket, or put it on your couch or wherever you want, and make kind of anything interactive. And it's not just for music. I mean, it's got like 100 built-in sounds, but you can also, it's got Bluetooth connections, so you can connect it to your iPad, control music apps that way. You can also control games and websites. And basically, also our software also works not only with the DrumPants hardware, but with Arduino. And I've actually used it to teach teenagers about Arduino, like hardware, electronics, programming, and music production, all using kind of this framing it with the DrumPants. So, yeah.
Cool. And then last on our panel is Raul Gutierrez, and Raul is the founder and CEO and an entrepreneur with 20 years history in technology and arts, and he is the founder of Tinybop, and it was born out of the belief that all kids are explorers. His hope is to build a company where ideas, design, and engineering come together to delight, inspire, and educate children. Raul was born in Monterrey, Mexico, grew up in Lufkin, Texas, and now lives in Brooklyn with his wife and his 2 boys. So Raul, if you tell us a little bit about Tinybop.
So Tinybop came out of my kids, or one of my kids, asking if he could trade his 6-year-old birthday for an iPhone. The iPhone was his favorite toy, and he really thinks of it as a toy that can be anything. And so we set out not to build games, but to build interactive toys that were educational. And our apps are sandbox apps. Each of them teaches kids a subject that we think every kid in the world needs to know about. We're in now 58 languages. And we have had, the first app was a human body app, and it's been downloaded close to 5 million times.
Show a picture of that. Cool. So that's kind of the overview of who we are, and now we're going to kind of get into now the down and dirty fun stuff as far as I'm concerned. So the question in front of all of these panelists is that they all are involved in something that needs engineering help and creative help. And so that gets kind of complicated sometimes, because a lot of engineers I know think in terms of how something works. And the creative people are sort of the, gee, I wish I could do this. And so the question is, how do you bring those two together and create something that is really wonderful learning toy for kids? So let's start with, and anybody on the panel who wants to answer this one, in your company, do you have teams that have both creative and technical expertise? I mean, and how do you guys go about structuring this thing? And how do you get those different sort of headsets to play nicely together to develop a product?
We have almost a 50-50 split between creatives and technical types. One thing that we found that works really well is allowing them to have a little more sympathy for each other and wear each other's hats. So we try to pair them most of the time on specific tasks. And then for our developers, we very much encourage them to actually create art, even if they're uncomfortable for it, like concept art. And for our creative team, we've had every member of our team take Code Academy. It's less relevant whether or not they can write code for our app, but it's important for them to understand that, some of the crazy ideas that they have sometimes, they kind of come down to earth a little bit and come up with the MVP after they've had to write a little bit of code.
So walking in each other's steps a little bit. Yeah. How about other people on the panel?
We're very lucky that we have a developer that is also a designer. And I think when you start, we're all pretty small companies, you have to have generalists. As you go on, the problems get, between that split becomes bigger because people necessarily specialize as you get bigger. So I actually think it's really important that people, just like you're saying, understand each other's problems and can sort of look at the world through the other people's issues.
Just real quickly, can you guys each go down and tell me how many people are in your company at this point? Because that will give us a sense of how, what size we are.
Depending on how you count it, we're just about 17 right now.
Okay.
We're about 6.
We have 14 full-timers and then 20 freelancers.
Okay.
We have 3 right now, but 2 other teammates are starting in early March. So.
Okay, so we have kind of a wide range here, but nobody is big yet. So along that line, I think a lot of you guys all started, you had an idea and you started. And then as you start to expand, one of the things is you've got to hire for a variety of different things. So any thoughts about how do you hire for creativity? That's, you're in a new industry that's growing, you're looking for cool ideas, you've got to take something beyond just an idea and move it beyond. So can you comment on that one? How do you hire for creativity?
So this also kind of touches on the last point, especially in like San Francisco, and I know here in New York too, there's this kind of movement called the creative coding movement, creative coders, and it's kind of a combination of programming and design, and it's kind of like understanding the whole space and being able to realize your own aesthetic designs with writing code. And there's so many tools out there that make writing code easier and easier that it's easier for more artistic people to pick up coding and kind of make their creation a reality, right? So we like to, our iOS developer, for instance, he does a lot of both. So he actually designed a lot of the UI elements in our app and also then programmed them.
For our team, so my co-founder and I, we both have mechanical engineering background, but we are also artists. So I was really strong in illustration. My co-founder is really strong in sculpture. But the reason why we hired a developer is we really like going lean. We don't believe that you need to overhire and contract everything out, because I think as a startup, you as a founder is setting up the vision, and you need to really drive the force. The reason why we started hiring software developers was that when we actually tested our product with customers, I think was our 7th or 8th iteration, we realized that a product without a story was not engaging for kids. And for us, for Jerry, we realized we need to add some color touching component to really tell a story of who Jerry is, where is he from. In order to make that technology, we needed software development. So that's the first time we started hiring the position. So for us, when we hire creative teams, we really think about what is best for the product. In order to build a cool feature or develop new technologies, what kind of skills or expertise do we need, and what kind of skills we don't have? Because we want, the co-founder Aaron and I, we really think that you need to be in a learning environment to learn new things, to really accelerate yourself. But also you want to be surrounded by smart people who you can accelerate that. So I think those are the 2 criteria that we always think about in hiring, especially for creative teams.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to just be creative. I know that all of you guys, as you expanded, let's make that a little broader. So you're out there and you're trying to hire maybe a technical person, and it sounds like that was sort of a technical person. And it's out of your wheelhouse. So, you're not comfortable with what you're exactly hiring. How do you go about doing that? And I think, Raul, we had a side discussion. Can you share one of your things with us? I thought it was fascinating to hear that story.
Well, I don't think creativity can be faked. People are creative in their field. So our engineer, a lot of our issues programming-wise are particle physics-based. We use physics-based animations so that they don't repeat for kids. And so we found this guy was posting to forums that were physics forums, and he was contributing a lot of code on GitHub. So this is a problem that he would have tried to solve on his own. So if you give people the types of problems that are the problems they would be working on anyway, they tend to be really happy. Looking at how people interact, this guy builds robots at home, for fun. One of our other developers is somebody who, as his side project, was one of the top apps in the App Store. He likes the problems we have. So having good problems and the type of problems that people want to solve anyway makes for a good team, and asking people about what they do in their spare time and
gives you some
gives you a lot of
insight.
insight into that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm hearing more and more about that strategy. There's a site called Stack Overflow where, oftentimes a company will post a specific problem they have. And lately, I think in the last month, I've heard like 3 or 4 hires from other companies that have been specifically where they asked a question, they got this phenomenal answer, they dug a little deeper, and they're like, who is this person that's answering this for fun? Really, they're not doing it for money or anything. That's how passionate they are. The other thing for culture fit, we actually hire kind of incognito a lot. We go to events like Global Game Jam, Startup Weekend, where you either have to make a video game or a new company in 48 hours. And we don't plan on hiring anyone per se, but we actually get to work with them in a really fast-paced schedule. And you can realize there's some people that are very talented, and you're like, oh, like I can't work with this person. Like when they're under stress, they're kind of a jerk. But there's others that will really shine there. You're like, this is a great person to work with. And we've actually made, I think, 4 hires at events like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things we're doing now for our developers is that one of our developers wrote like a little shell of a game. And so when a new person comes on, we give them the game and we just say, you have 24 hours to improve it. And so the last guy we hired added artificial intelligence to the game like in 24 hours. That's really
Yeah, so that's cool. So all of you guys started with an idea and then you turned it into a business. So I'd like us to do just a little short thing about, kind of tell us a little bit of how you got there from that idea to moving. I know, let's start with you because I know your story is a little different than everybody else because you started in grad school with an idea that was part of a grad school project, right?
It's an undergrad.
Undergrad, okay. And then how did you go, if you could just give us a short overview here.
Yeah, so we came up with the concept, and the concept validated. We got entered like this diabetes mind competition, and it actually won the most creative prize. But it was drawing on a post-it note. So, and I think the first moment was we made our first prototype. It was really ugly. We hacked a Furby eye. Gutierrez had winking eyes. Made out of foam core. Kind of not a good idea. But anyway, we tested with a child, and this child, a 5-year-old, he told us everything that was wrong about the prototype, but he actually showed us how the concept of Jerry the Bear was really exciting for him. And what we did was we wanted to make him happy, so that was a driving force to build more and more prototypes and test it with the kids. Kids still loved it, give us more feedback, and it became this thing for me where my extracurricular was taking so much time, so I'm failing in classes almost, but doing really well in my extracurricular project. So it ended up being, it really changed our whole course, like my undergrad education experience, where I was making independent studies and find mentors. Like I will learn what I need to learn, but I'm going to work with Jerry, not other projects. And end up finding, and being a student, it was really easy for us to find a lot of grant opportunities. So we actually started out from a $100 grant to like a $3,000 grant, ended up going to different like workshops, found mentors that made us move to Providence from Chicago, and took our classes over Skype to work with this full time. So I think for us is if we haven't tested with that one child who gave us every single wrong idea about Jerry, I don't think we'll be where we are right now, to be honest.
Yeah. Tyler, tell us how you, because I think you started with one concept and then ended up someplace totally different with testing, right?
Oh yeah, so that's one story, right. Yeah, basically, yeah, it's all about the user testing, right? Because like, if you just have this idea and then you just try to make it all by yourself, then it's going to be the perfect product for only you. And so you gotta like test it with lots of people and get their feedback and watch them and see how they use it and see how you can improve it. So one way we did that was we were designing the enclosure for the DrumPants device. We were like putting a little like this thing on the back that you could wrap the wires around because we wanted it to work, for like 6-foot tall guy and also like 3-foot tall kid, right? So the wires like have to be stored somewhere, and kind of one size fits all. And so we had this like big bulky thing on the back where we meant to, you know, wrap the wires around, but like everyone we gave it to was taking it and just using it more as like a belt clip. So just to clip the thing on their belt on their pants. So we kind of like threw away the wire thing idea, and now we have a belt clip on that.
Yeah, interesting. How about Raul, and do you guys test, and did it change your
We do a lot of testing. I mean, I've got 2 little boys, so they have seen every iteration of the project, and even now, before we even get to like a software, we show kids just the drawings, and we ask, you know, what do you see? And we ask if they can live in that drawing, because if they can't, if it's not compelling, then, you know, the animated version of it is not going to be that much better. So we do a lot of iterative testing. We also just have a lot of research that goes into our apps beforehand, how other people taught these subjects. And we look at, you know, 50 years of children's books and children's educational media.
Right. And Carly, how about you guys? Did you, because you changed radically after you guys got some
Yeah, so
feedback.
we started with a lot of beta testers, over 100, before we even put it up on Kickstarter. We still were a little wrong on a lot of things, actually. So what we started doing was having play sessions. So we record video of kids playing, all different kids, every 2 weeks. And then it's part of kind of our religion in our company to have the entire team come in and watch the videos of kids
Well,
playing.
this is the creative and the technical teams together,
Yeah, everyone.
right? So everybody is involved in this, trying to do this. Okay?
Yeah, and it was actually a little surprising. At first I thought, okay, it's gonna help us with like the small stuff, but I think I realized very quickly that our entire team had different ideas on how we thought the kids were playing with it. And even if I explained it to them, I could say, I talked to a parent and they're saying they're having problems with this. When they see it in front of them, like the first time we did it, like literally everyone was like this. Ugh, like they're covering their eyes, horrified at like what was happening, and it gave us all clarity. We never had any arguments on what had to happen next after that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So what we're hearing is that after user testing, you guys are changing the products. So how did you come about incorporating learning into all your products? I mean, each one of you guys are based on sort of trying to teach something to kids. So can you talk about that process a little bit?
Sure. In our case, each of our apps is covering a big subject. So human body is a giant subject. And so...
And this is the first of, you're
this is the
planning
first
a
of a
bunch
series of many
of,
apps. Yeah.
right.
We currently have 3 in development in various stages.
Okay.
And the first thing we do is a lot of research. And so we have, you know, somebody from Columbia's Teacher College who works with us, and we go through sort of all the books, those classic science books from the 60s, and we see how they have done it. And essentially we try to distill it down to questions that are the big questions, like what does the skeleton do? Or what does the skeletal system do? What does the heart do? And then we ask, how can we embed that in interaction? And so with the skeleton, you know, if you pull out a bone, our body collapses. It's really simple, but it's very effective. And the way that we tested that to see whether it was actually working was that we would have kids draw a body before where we had an outline, and we would ask them, you know, what's inside and what do you know about it? And a lot of times they didn't really know very much. And then we'd have them play for the app for an hour, and then we'd ask them again, and then, you know, they did. Or they could answer the questions like effectively. So it's a good process.
For our company, so Jerry's a little bit unique because it actually have to help kids to help through the emotional coping process, but also change behaviors, to really understand, to have to write behaviors early on, then you don't have to go to emergency rooms or other complications later on. So it's a balance of hands-on learning and also why you have to learn it, understanding the meaning of it. So what we do is, we actually build a curriculum in diabetes because there are specific things you need to learn early on. And then we think about what kind of unique stories Jerry can tell. Why is he going to under the sea? Why is he going to the tundra? Or all these different stories. And actually, when kids are going through the stories or the game, it is not screaming like learn diabetes. It's actually how Jerry learned the sport to win the Olympics game. But we tie it into things such as when you're climbing, you need to alternate your arms and legs. It's kind of like site rotation when you check your blood glucose levels, things like that. And in order to unlock different modules, we assign a task for the kids. Say, hey, can you feed Jerry a carb-free snack? Can you plan a meal that consists of 45 carbs? And kids think about, okay, I can do that. So we really carefully tie this task with the play, and also the way we build Jerry. Jerry's on the Android platform, so it's really easy for us to build software really quickly and ping that wirelessly to give them more interactions. So what we're trying to do right now is we have a set base curriculum that we have, but getting feedback from families, we can modify a lot of the different learnings to really match their learning skill sets.
Our goal is really focusing on creative play that lets kids really just be passionate about education. I think that the fact that Raul was saying that their app is sandboxy is so huge, it can't be linear anymore. And I was just talking to a dad last night who opted to have his kids be unschooled, is what he called it. And he said, think about what we're teaching kids. We're saying, sit still for 8 hours and we're gonna teach you, what we've decided you're gonna learn. And I think that there's a book that probably a lot of, or some of you have read, called Diamond Age. I think that it's a huge inspiration for our entire team. This concept of, instead of saying, this is what you're going to learn about, it's, let's let you be passionate. And we had learned that the hard way. We used to have a bunch of true or false questions. And we realized, one of our mentors said, that's drill and kill, Carlene. No kid loves answering true or false questions. The difference was, instead of saying, okay, here's true and false about the sun, actually, if it's a little girl who loves unicorns, we got to go save the unicorn planet, and here you have to help use your knowledge to save the day, and making it contextual and around their passions. And that's really our vision of the company. It won't always be Ubooly forever. It will be different products that really guide kids and let them be passionate about learning.
Yeah, I like what you said about the just letting kids kind of explore and teach themselves. That's kind of what when I was teaching the kids in the Netherlands using the DrumPants software, it was we kind of just decided, we figured out what the kids wanted to actually do, and then just kind of gave them the tools to do it, and just let them go and play. And so a lot of them were into hip hop, so they used the DrumPants to make beats, and then we taught them how to use Ableton Live, which is a recording software, and so they actually made a hip hop song and got to perform it later in one of the local venues. And but not all of them were into hip hop, so some of them were more into VJing and visual video art, and so they use the same DrumPants sensors to control video projections at that same show. So you just gotta let kids run wild with their passion, and they'll figure out a way to learn from it.
I'd add one thing when you're testing is to always test against the best things in the category. So my ultimate test at the end is to have our app and then Minecraft and a bunch of things that are really sticky for kids. And if we can keep kids in our app, then we feel like
you're doing something
we're doing
right.
something right.
Yeah. So as you guys expand, I'm sure that both the creative and the technical teams come up with concepts of things that you can do, the things you can add to a product. And how do you go about sort of deciding the evolution of your products? And how do your teams work on that? And does that include this user testing? And, how have you moved forward from where you originally launched or where you're headed? I think you all have the benefit of being able to iterate as you go because of the kinds of products you're producing.
So I think among the group, we have, for my team, it's the smallest size, I think. So for us, as Carly mentioned before, I think everyone to have a similar vision is really important. I think for our team, actually being in the user testing together and actually seeing kids was really helpful for us to see the vision, because yes, you might have different insight, but ultimately you're all on the same page. What has to be worked on, what kind of things you have to do, and that actually helped us even in the creative process. Our really hardcore developer, like engineering person, wanted to participate in a script writing process because he wants to contribute, and they actually helped him to become more creative. So I think the more testing and seeing more users interacting with your product help you be in sync with other people to come up with better ideas. And I think that process helped us to have like less collision as we brainstorm. So that was one of our case.
We're not that formal about it. We kind of start with the high-level initiatives. You know, for example, we launched in Apple stores for the holiday, and like that was a real deadline where we had to have our like new languages added. But we try to not add too much extra around that. Like we kind of stick to the core and then let our team make decisions, and then we'll just test it with users. So a good example of this was one of our audio artists asked, you know, what if Ubooly starts playing sounds in the background? And honestly, I was like, that sounds really weird. Like, why would it start having like wind noises and cave noises? But what we found was he just tried it. And I think that a lot of bigger companies have analysis paralysis, where we might have analyzed that decision and come up with all these reasons why Ubooly shouldn't do that. And instead, we just said, okay, like let's try it and see how it resonates with kids, and then it became really obvious. So we try to keep it pretty loose.
That's totally the advantage of being small and just constantly iterating. It's like, you know, the story I was just talking about, how the belt clip thing is like, you know, as soon as we saw people using this as a belt clip, we just like, all right, let's just 3D print a new case and test it out with other users and then get their feedback. And yeah, it's just all about, you know, make a new revision or add a new feature and then just give it out to your beta testers and let them, you know, test it out. And then also just keep collecting feedback from them and the features that they want, and you'll usually kind of see things pop out, like rise to the top of, oh, well, everyone asked for this one feature, so it seems like something we should add.
In our company, I'm usually the one asking for things that are hard to do. And I think it's good. I think that you should ask of your technical and engineering people like the hardest problems that they've ever worked on. Like that's for me a measure of success. But sometimes we also have very good sort of production people that say, well, we could do this, but like we're not going to launch it for another 6 months. So I think it really is about having a team that can communicate the sort of the pie in the sky stuff, and then the sort of practical realities of, well, you know, if you're going to have fire in this app, it's going to cost, you know, this much time to burn a tree down.
Right, right. So how do you go about when you guys are starting to grow? Have you run into anything that you can share with this audience about some of the things you've learned about as you start to grow and you start to bring in more of both sides of this sort of equation that we've been talking about? Any tips?
Never hire people just because you think you need a body in that spot. Like it's the biggest mistakes we've made in this company and in other companies that I've been in have been hiring somebody because we thought we needed a certain type person, as opposed to hiring the right person. It's better to have no person than to have the wrong person.
So define that a little bit more. Dig a little deeper on that, Raul. What do you mean by?
I think.
Meaning they look good on paper, but where are you going with that?
Well, there are a lot of factors, but you know, culture is really important. You know, I'm by far the oldest person in my company, and we have a small, young company that works really hard. If you get the sort of wrong person in that has much more of a sort of a 9-to-5 non-startup-y type mentality,
You get some friction.
it's not just friction, but it can change the culture in ways that you don't want. And every single person changes the culture, and that's normal. But it can be a problem. And then other times, sometimes if you just are hiring too quickly because you have this pressure, you know, because your bandwidth is limited. Sometimes you're not waiting until that person that is as passionate about the project as you are. Like I feel like everybody that works in our company pretty much feels lucky to be there. And if we hire somebody that doesn't feel that way, if it's just a job for them, it affects everybody.
I think an interesting question when you have a group of startups, the way you guys all are, is how do you work at trying to build your brand? I mean, that's the one disadvantage you have coming from a big toy company. You know, you're lean and small, but you don't have the big resources that everybody else does. Does everybody have to wear a lot of hats? What goes on?
Well, I mean, I can go, the first thing we did was built a brand book. So we built a 60-page brand book, and it's been something that has been enormously successful. And just because you're a little company doesn't mean that you have to be perceived as a small company.
Right.
If you have a very, sort of professional-looking brand, people will perceive you that way.
Right.
I think that we found that we couldn't reach our customers in the same way as the big guys. I mean, it's no secret. Mattel, Hasbro, they average between 600 to 700 million a year in marketing spend, and they're very good at marketing. And I think some of the mistakes we made in the beginning was we said, oh, we'll be like them. But if you really look at it, who's going to win that battle? You know, if we're just going to do it the same way as them, we're going to lose. I think the thing that we have an advantage on is just telling our story. With the new Kickstarter culture, people really want to back the people, and they want to hear that story.
Yeah.
And what we found was just finding ways to tell our story, and even being a little vulnerable at times and exposing our customers to like things we did wrong and what we learned from. Like, I was amazed at how much more support we got when we stopped pretending to be this bigger company and we're just really honest and upfront and said, this is what makes us tick. I hope it makes you tick too, and you'll find that you'll just get a very different level of engagement than you would otherwise.
Cool. I'm going to stop peppering them with questions just to give you guys a little bit of time here. Does anybody have any questions from the audience you would like to throw at this panel? Yes. What do you outsource is what she's asking. And that's a really good question. What do you outsource when you're small like that? How do you make that decision?
In our company, so we were really cautious in what we were outsourcing. I think that's also a challenge where, for IP issues and also building your company, what are the things that has to be in-house that you need to teach yourself how to really keep it in the house? What are the things that you could outsource that you really can help you time? The group that we outsourced was the PCB manufacturer that we've been using. So my co-founder is leading the hardware side, and he came up with all the components that he needs, but designing the board itself, he doesn't have the expertise yet. He knows he can learn it, but for a year of time that it takes, by contracting it out, it only takes like half of that. And that helped us to meet the deadline, so that was the reason why we contracted it out. It was a skill set where it's a nice to have in a company. It's not like an in-house thing that we have to do, and that was helping us to align their timeline. But for things like the type of how the technology works or what kind of sensor that is going to be in, we try to do everything from our side and then have the contractor to execute it versus them coming up with ideas and telling us what to do.
All right, so we're out of time, unfortunately, but we will all be out in the hall so that you can come up and ask us questions, because we welcome that. And I would just like to do a little plug in the sense that in my role as Kid Tech columnist, I'm always interested in new ideas of people who are doing things. So please come up and exchange business cards with me so I can know who you are, because that's kind of how I work, and being able to talk about new and exciting things in technology. So thank you for coming.